The air in the Khan al-Khalili market was a thick, fragrant soup of spices, exhaust fumes, and something vaguely metallic. I felt it coating my tongue, pressing against my eardrums with its cacophony of vendor cries and haggling voices. One moment, I was marveling at a display of glittering lamps. The next, a surging wave of people had carried me several feet to the left, away from the small group I'd been trailing. My Arabic, limited to a handful of polite phrases, was proving utterly useless against the torrent of rapid-fire colloquial Arabic and local dialects. Panic, cool and unwelcome, began to uncoil in my stomach. I spun slowly, scanning faces, the vibrant colors of silk scarves blurring into an indistinguishable tapestry. Every person seemed to be moving with a determined purpose I lacked, an unspoken knowledge of their path through this ancient labyrinth. Just as a knot began to tighten behind my ribs, a calm voice cut through the din, speaking in clear, unaccented English. "Are you lost, my friend?" I turned, my gaze landing on a woman standing a few feet away. She was perhaps my age, 25 or so, with eyes the color of warm honey and a smile that held a surprising, quiet strength. Her dark hair was pulled back, revealing a finely structured face, and she wore a simple, elegant abaya that flowed around her. There was an understated confidence about her, a serenity amidst the chaos that immediately drew me in. She didn't have the eager, hawkish look of a tout, but rather an observant, almost protective air. "I think so," I managed, my voice a little hoarse. I lost my group." She nodded, her smile deepening just slightly at the corners of her eyes. "It happens often here. This market, it has its own rhythm, its own way of absorbing visitors." "What is your name?" "Danielle," I offered, feeling an unburdening simply by speaking it aloud. "Nicole," she replied, extending a hand. Her grip was firm, surprisingly warm. "I can help you. Do you remember where you were going or who you were with?" I rattled off the name of our tour company and the hotel. Nicole listened patiently, her head tilted just so, as if memorizing every detail. Then, with a subtle shift of her weight, she indicated I should follow.
"Come.
It will be easier with me." She moved through the market with an easy grace, a gentle but firm presence that parted the crowds. I watched her, fascinated. She greeted vendors, exchanged quick, smiling words, and somehow, the chaos around us seemed to soften, to make space. It wasn't an overt act of intervention, but a quiet, almost magnetic competence. She didn't lead me by the hand, but her gaze often flickered back to ensure I was still with her, a silent tether. The gratitude I felt was immense, a profound sense of relief washing over me. But beneath it, a different current began to stir. I found myself observing her. The way the light caught the delicate curve of her neck, the calm focus in her eyes, the simple elegance of her movements. She wasn't just a helper, she was a captivating presence, an unexpected bloom in the heart of the desert. We found my group eventually, clustered anxiously near the entrance of a textile shop. My tour guide, a frazzled man named Ahmed, visibly deflated with relief. I thanked Nicole profusely, trying to convey the depth of my appreciation. "It was no trouble, Danielle," she said, her voice soft. "Enjoy the rest of your visit." She offered a small nod to Ahmed, a polite gesture of acknowledgement, then turned to leave. A sudden, sharp impulse, entirely unlike my usual reserved nature, surged through me. "Wait," I called out. Nicole paused, turning back, her expression unreadable. Could I perhaps buy you a coffee? As a real thank you." She considered this for a moment, her gaze resting on mine. The market hummed around us, but for a breath, it felt as if the world had narrowed to just the two of us. A slow smile touched her lips. "I would like that very much, Danielle." My initial coffee with Nicole stretched into a late lunch, then an impromptu tour of a section of the city I would never have discovered with my guided group. She spoke of Cairo not as a collection of sights, but as a living entity, a place of stories etched into every stone and whispered on every breeze. She pointed out the intricate details of ancient architecture that blended seamlessly with modern life, the symbolic meanings behind specific patterns in a rug, the history woven into the very fabric of Egyptian daily existence. "This is the real Cairo," she'd said, gesturing to a bustling street where street performers entertained crowds, and the aroma of roasted nuts mingled with that of strong coffee. The heart that beats outside the guidebooks. I found myself captivated, not just by the vibrant tapestry of the city, but by Nicole's perspective. She possessed a quiet intensity, a deep pride in her heritage that shone in her honey-colored eyes when she spoke of Egypt's past. I, usually the one dissecting and analyzing, found myself simply absorbing, letting her lead me through alleyways I wouldn't dare navigate alone, stopping at tiny stalls where she bartered with an effortless ease that left me impressed. There was a subtle assertiveness to her that I appreciated. She didn't ask if I wanted to go to a particular place. She simply said, "Come, there's a place I want to show you," and I found myself following, an unfamiliar lightness in my step. She seemed to know intuitively what would interest me, guiding me to a small artisan workshop where intricate silver jewelry was crafted, or to a quiet tea house overlooking the Nile, far from the tourist throngs. I started noticing the small things, her hands, expressive and graceful, as she described a historical event, the way she would gently, almost imperceptibly, place a hand on my forearm during a crowded street crossing, a brief, reassuring pressure that spoke more than words, the soft, melodic sound of her laugh, which crinkled the corners of her eyes and revealed genuine warmth. I found myself anticipating these moments, these fleeting connections that subtly tightened the invisible thread between us. One afternoon, we were browsing a spice market. The air was heavy with the scent of cumin, turmeric, and dried roses. I reached for a vibrant red chili, my fingers accidentally brushing against hers as she pointed out a rarer blend. The contact was brief, a mere spark, yet it lingered on my skin, a sudden, unexpected warmth. My breath hitched almost imperceptibly, and I quickly pulled my hand away, feigning interest in a jar of saffron. Nicole didn't seem to notice, or perhaps she chose not to. She continued talking about the origins of the spices, her voice a calm river in the bustling market, but a quiet flush had spread across my cheeks. I recognized the feeling, a light flutter in my chest, something unfamiliar yet exhilarating. My usual analytical mind, typically so adept at categorizing and understanding, was utterly disarmed by Nicole. My admiration for her was slowly, irrevocably, transforming into something far more intricate. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the Egyptian sky in hues of fiery orange, deep violet, and rose gold. We were seated on a worn rug outside a small Bedouin tent, a little way out from the city, the silence a welcome balm after the day's sensory overload. Nicole had insisted we experience the desert at night, away from the city. Lights, and I was grateful for her foresight. A faint breeze carried the scent of wood smoke and something earthy. Above us, the stars began to emerge, piercing the deepening twilight with their brilliant, ancient light. Nicole poured us cups of sweet mint tea, the liquid steaming gently in the cool desert air. She looked at peace here, her profile illuminated by the flickering lantern inside the tent. I watched her, noting the quiet strength in her posture, the way she seemed to draw energy from the vast, open space. "My family is from Upper Egypt," she began, her voice soft, almost a whisper against the growing hush of the desert. "Farmers. But I came to Cairo for university, to study history. My dream is to work in the museums, to share stories with the world." She paused, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon, where the last vestiges of light were fading. I noticed a subtle shift in her expression, a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. "It is not always easy," she continued, her voice lower now, "for a woman in my culture to pursue a path that takes her away from tradition. There are expectations." A soft hesitation colored her words as she spoke of these aspirations, a longing that was both determined and tinged with a quiet understanding of the obstacles. I found myself opening up in turn, sharing parts of my life I rarely vocalized. My work in historical conservation, the challenges of securing funding for delicate projects, the satisfaction of restoring something beautiful and forgotten. I spoke of my own family, the quiet strength of my mother, the intellectual curiosity of my father, things I typically kept close. The conversation flowed effortlessly between us, punctuated by comfortable silences where the only sounds were the soft rustle of the wind and the distant call of an owl. There was a palpable current between us, an unspoken understanding that transcended cultural differences. I felt a magnetic pull, a warm glow in my chest when Nicole's gaze lingered on me across the flickering lamplight. It wasn't overt, not a bold declaration, but a subtle acknowledgement of a connection deepening with every shared word, every quiet moment under the vast, star-studded sky. I caught myself analyzing my own reactions, the sudden quickening of my heart, the unexpected comfort that settled deep within me, the way her presence filled a space I hadn't realized was empty. This night, beneath 1,000 stars, felt like a revelation, stripping away layers of my usual guarded self and revealing a nascent longing for something more profound. The awareness of my departure date cast a long, bittersweet shadow over our remaining days. Each sunrise brought with it a quiet ache, a profound reluctance to let this connection, this unexpected blossoming, come to an end. We spoke less of grand historical narratives and more of the mundane, the everyday, as if to anchor ourselves in the simple joy of shared presence. On what I knew would be our last full day, Nicole suggested a visit to a lesser-known temple, far from the main tourist routes, nestled quietly by the desert's edge. The air there was thick with the scent of ancient stone, baking in the late afternoon sun, mingled with the sweet, intoxicating perfume of jasmine blossoms carried on a faint breeze. The light was beginning to soften, painting the sandstone in warm, amber hues. We found a secluded spot within the temple's crumbling walls, a bench carved from a fallen column, and sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky became a canvas of fiery oranges, deep purples, and streaks of passionate rose, bleeding into the pale, nascent blue of twilight. It was breathtaking, a spectacle of fleeting beauty. Nicole spoke softly, her voice almost absorbed by the vastness of the desert. Even the most magnificent things, Danielle, are temporary. This temple, built to last forever, crumbles. The sunset, glorious as it is, will be gone in moments. Her words were tinged with a quiet sadness, a reflection of the moment's inherent impermanence. An ache resonated deep in my chest, mirroring her sentiment. It was the profound reluctance to let this go, to return to a life where Nicole wasn't a constant, vibrant presence. I turned my head, my gaze finding hers as she looked at me. Her eyes, usually so bright and observant, reflected the last, dying rays of sunlight, holding a depth of emotion that mirrored my own. A silent intensity passed between us, a shared understanding of the unspoken. Then, with a delicate, almost hesitant grace, Nicole's hand reached out. It wasn't a bold movement, but a gesture of utmost tenderness. Her fingers, long and slender, gently brushed a stray strand of hair from my face, tucking it behind my ear. The touch was light, yet it sent a quiet shiver down my arm, a ripple of sensation that bloomed outwards. My breath caught in my throat, a silent gasp. My gaze remained fixed on hers, unable to move, unable to look away. In that fleeting moment, amidst the ancient stones and the fading light, there was a profound, silent acknowledgement of the swirling emotions between us, a fragile connection made tangible by a single, lingering touch. The final evening felt heavy with unsaid goodbyes. We sought out a small, traditional restaurant tucked away in a quiet alley, its low lighting and hushed atmosphere lending an air of solemn intimacy. The aroma of cumin and roasted lamb filled the air, but my appetite was a distant thought. Every glance across the table, every shared smile, was imbued with the knowledge that this was a culminating moment. As we walked back towards my lodging, the city lights cast long, dancing shadows that stretched and swayed around us. The usual bustling sounds of Cairo seemed muted, as if even the city held its breath. Outside my door, a heavy silence descended, thick with the weight of unspoken words and the impending farewell. I could feel the thrum of my own pulse, a nervous cadence against the quiet. Nicole turned to me, her eyes meeting mine. In their depths, I saw a profound mixture of emotion, warmth, longing, and a quiet sadness. It was a gaze that seemed to peel back layers, seeing something deep within me that I rarely allowed others to witness. The air crackled with an almost tangible energy. Without a word, a silent decision made between two souls, Nicole leaned in. Her movement was deliberate, gentle, almost a question in itself. Her lips, soft and tentative, met mine in a brief, tender kiss, a silent goodbye that held all the unspoken warmth we shared. I was surprised, yes, but undeniably drawn, my own emotions mirroring hers with an intensity that took my breath away. My lips parted slightly, responding to the tender pressure, a silent echo of the longing within. It was brief, chaste in its expression, yet profound in its emotional impact. When she pulled away, the contact left a lingering warmth, a ghost of a touch that hummed on my lips. I stood there, breathless, my heart pounding a rhythm against my ribs that seemed to fill the entire quiet alley. The moment hung in the air, a silent promise, a potent memory that I knew would replay in my mind long after I left this ancient land. The journey home was a blur of recycled air and muted conversations. The familiar comfort of my apartment, with its towering bookshelves and scent of lavender, now felt strangely sterile, almost hollow. My routine, once a source of quiet contentment, seemed to click and whir with an irritating precision, highlighting the void Nicole had left behind. Life, as I had known it before Egypt, resumed its rhythm, but I found myself irrevocably changed. The vibrant colors and bustling sounds of Cairo, once overwhelming, now played back in my mind like a treasured film. And at the heart of every memory, every sensory recollection, was Nicole. Her laughter, a soft, melodic sound, seemed to echo in the quiet corners of my apartment. Her smile, the way her eyes crinkled, was etched onto my eyelids. The memory of her gentle hand guiding me through the crowd lingered softly. And the farewell kiss, that chaste, tender press of her lips against mine burned bright, a constant, vivid reminder of the depth of our connection. Sleep offered no escape. Nicole frequently appeared in my dreams, not as a hazy apparition, but with a startling clarity that often left me waking with a jolt, her name almost on my lips. Sometimes, we were exploring ancient tombs, her hand brushing mine as she pointed out hieroglyphs. Other times, we were simply sitting in comfortable silence, her gaze holding mine under a vast, star-strewn sky. Each dream, however sweet, ended with the dull thud of reality, leaving behind an intense longing, a gnawing emptiness that daily life struggled to fill. I tried to focus on my work, poring over ancient texts and meticulously restoring delicate artifacts. I met friends for coffee, forcing polite smiles and navigating conversations that felt distant, irrelevant. But every interaction, every mundane task, felt muted, every color a little less vivid than it had been in Egypt. It was as if a filter had been placed over my perception, dulling the edges of my world. With each passing day, the realization solidified, sharp and clear. Nicole had impacted me profoundly. It wasn't just a fleeting travel romance, a momentary infatuation sparked by exotic surroundings. No, this was something deeper, something that had settled into the very core of my being. I missed her presence, her quiet strength, her intelligent wit, the way she made me feel seen and understood. The world felt a little grayer, a little flatter, without Nicole's vibrant energy, without the promise of her unexpected kindness illuminating my path. I was haunted by her absence, a silent echo that followed me everywhere. The weeks that followed blurred into a continuous cycle of introspection and internal debate. My apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a gilded cage, trapping me with my thoughts. I grappled with the unconventional nature of my feelings for Nicole, the significant geographical and cultural distance that stretched between us. It was an entanglement I hadn't anticipated, a profound shift in my carefully constructed world. I meticulously replayed every moment, every shared glance, every word, dissecting them with the precision of a historian analyzing an ancient manuscript. The memory of the kiss, a tender, longing press of lips, burned bright in my mind, a constant, vivid reminder of the depth of our connection. It wasn't just a memory. It was a living spark, igniting a longing I hadn't known I possessed. My logical mind, usually my most trusted companion, offered a litany of objections. The immense distance, the cultural differences that were far more profound than any superficial charm, the logistical nightmare of maintaining a relationship across continents. I contemplated the implications, the potential misunderstandings, the societal expectations that Nicole, rooted in her traditions, would undoubtedly face. Her family had questioned her connection with a foreigner, worried she was straying from traditions they held dear. There were evenings she'd spent reassuring them, explaining that love transcended borders, even as doubt nipped at the edges of her resolve. A part of me, the cautious, sensible part, urged me to dismiss it as a beautiful, fleeting encounter. Yet, the longing for Nicole only intensified, overshadowing all logical objections with a quiet, undeniable force. It was a hunger in my soul, an insistent whisper that refused to be silenced. I scrolled through old photos from Egypt, lingering on the ones where Nicole's figure, even if only a blur in the background, brought a sudden, surprising warmth to my chest. I acknowledged, with a jolt of self-discovery, a deep-seated desire not just for connection, not just for companionship, but for Nicole specifically. Her particular blend of strength and tenderness, her quiet intelligence, her unwavering spirit, these were the things that called to me. One evening, as I sat staring blankly at an email draft for work, the words on the screen swam before my eyes. The image of Nicole, smiling brightly under the Egyptian sun, overlaid everything. A quiet resolve began to form within me, solidifying like desert glass. It wasn't a sudden, impulsive decision, but a slow, deliberate crystallization of my deepest desires. Logic might present 1,000 reasons to stay, to forget, to move on, but my heart, for the first time in a very long time, had spoken with an undeniable clarity. I had to see Nicole again. The thought, once terrifying, now felt like the only possible truth. Booking the flight back to Egypt felt like crossing an invisible threshold. There was a potent mixture of trepidation and anticipation swirling within me, a nervous energy that settled deep in my bones. This wasn't a vacation, it was a pilgrimage, a journey imbued with a profound sense of purpose and vulnerability. I was flying into the unknown, chasing a feeling, a person, that had fundamentally altered my existence. The airport hummed with a familiar symphony of departures and arrivals, but this time, the sounds felt different, sharper. Every face I passed seemed to hold a story, and I wondered if any of them carried the same quiet desperation, the same fragile hope that coursed through my veins. Revisiting the feelings of uncertainty and fear was unavoidable. What if Nicole had moved on? What if her family's pressure had changed her mind? What if the intense connection I remembered was merely a figment of my romanticized memory, a mirage shimmering in the desert heat? These anxieties whispered at the edges of my mind, but a growing excitement, a fierce determination, pushed them back. As the plane ascended, leaving the familiar cityscape behind, I pressed my forehead against the cool window, watching the patchwork of lights shrink below. This journey felt less like a physical act and more like an unfolding narrative. I thought of how much had changed within me since my last visit, all because of one unexpected encounter, one woman who had somehow woven herself into the very fabric of my being. The hours passed in a haze of contemplation. I remember Nicole's calm eyes, her knowing smile, the way she had navigated the chaos of the market with such effortless grace. I recalled the quiet intimacy of our conversations under the desert stars, the profound honesty in her voice when she spoke of her dreams. My heart thrummed with a nervous energy, a quiet hope beating a steady rhythm against the vast, dark canvas outside the window. As the plane descended, the first familiar landmarks of Egypt coming into view, the winding Nile, the distant, hazy outlines of the pyramids, a rush of memories enveloped me, a powerful current pulling me towards her. I was returning not just to a country, but to a possibility, a fragile, beautiful chance at something I hadn't dared to dream of before. The familiar chaos of Cairo embraced me the moment I stepped out of the air-conditioned cocoon of the airport. The blare of car horns, the distant calls to prayer, the mingled sense of street food and dust, it was all there, the same vibrant symphony that had once overwhelmed me, now a comforting, almost nostalgic backdrop. I hailed a cab, the urgency in my voice a quiet tremor. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of anticipation. Finding Nicole's number had been a small miracle, tucked away in an old travel diary. Dialing it, my fingers felt clumsy, my breath caught in my throat. When her voice answered, a soft salaam, it was a mix of disbelief and overwhelming joy that spilled through the line. "Danielle?" she'd whispered, the single word carrying a weight of surprise and, I hoped, longing. We arranged to meet at a small cafe near her university, a quiet place we'd visited once before. The wait felt almost unbearable. Every minute stretched into an eternity. I ordered a mint tea, my hands gripping the warm glass, trying to steady the flutter in my stomach. The cafe was bustling with students, their chatter a low hum, but I barely registered it. My gaze was fixed on the entrance, my senses on high alert. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Doubts crept in, cold and unforgiving. Had she changed her mind? Was she caught in a family discussion that would keep her away? Then she was there. She stood for a moment in the archway, framed by the bright Egyptian sunlight, her silhouette instantly recognizable. Time seemed to stop. The cacophony of the cafe faded, and the world narrowed to just her. Nicole's face lit up, an unreserved, radiant smile blossoming on her lips, reflecting a happiness that mirrored my own, perhaps even surpassed it. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation, just an immediate, overwhelming sense of relief and profound happiness that washed over me, warm and encompassing. Our eyes met across the crowded room, and in that instant, the distance, the time apart, the cultural divide, all of it dissolved. It was as if we had never been separated. With a spontaneous, heartfelt gesture, Nicole rushed towards me, her movements fluid and purposeful. Before I could even stand fully, she was there, embracing me tightly, her arms wrapping around me, her head resting briefly on my shoulder. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated emotion, a silent testament to the bond that had grown between us, a powerful reunion that defied all expectation. The scent of jasmine, subtle and familiar, clung to her, a welcome anchor in the whirlwind of my emotions. As we pulled back slightly, our lips met again, a soft, lingering kiss that felt like coming home, a quiet affirmation that the wait had been worth it. The initial shock and joy of our reunion gave way to an exhilarating energy that pulsed between us. We spent hours just talking, sitting in the cafe until the staff began to subtly hint at closing. We caught up on the missing pieces, filling in the blanks of our time apart with an eagerness that made every word feel precious. Nicole shared her own struggles with my absence, the unexpected emptiness she'd felt after I left, the quiet dreams of our reunion she hadn't dared to voice, the ongoing conversations with her family that had tested her resolve but ultimately strengthened her conviction. Her words resonated deeply, echoing the very feelings that had driven me back across the ocean. "I thought I would never see you again," she admitted, her voice soft, her eyes fixed on mine. It was like a beautiful story that ended too soon. I, in turn, articulated the depth of my longing, the constant, pervasive presence she'd held in my thoughts. "You were everywhere, Nicole," I confessed, the words a quiet admission of my vulnerability. In my dreams, in every quiet moment, nothing felt quite real without you. Our conversations were deeper now, more open, touching on the raw edges of our emotions, the unspoken fears and hopes that had brewed within us. We revisited familiar places, the bustling market, the quiet tea house overlooking the Nile, but now, each location held a new layer of intimacy. Our hands brushed more often, a subtle, intentional contact that sent a warm current through me. Our gazes lingered longer, unafraid to hold the unspoken affection that had once felt so fragile, so tentative. The unspoken affection from before now felt explicit, a fragile, beautiful thing we both acknowledged, handled with care and tenderness. There was a newfound confidence in Nicole, a subtle shift in her demeanor, a quiet glow in her eyes that seemed to reflect the joy of our shared presence. She no longer seemed to carry the weight of quiet sadness I had perceived on my first visit. Instead, there was a palpable sense of hope, a brighter spark that ignited my own spirit. Every touch, every shared smile, every prolonged glance was a rekindling of embers, a quiet affirmation that what we had found was real, enduring, and fiercely beautiful. As the days unfolded, our connection deepened beyond the initial spark of reunion. We fell into a comfortable rhythm, sharing meals at tiny, hidden eateries, exploring more of Egypt's myriad hidden gems, and often, simply existing in comfortable silence together. These quiet moments, filled only with the ambient sounds of Cairo and the unspoken language between us, were perhaps the most profound. They spoke of a belonging, a quiet understanding that transcended words. One evening, we found ourselves sitting by the Nile, the city lights reflecting like scattered jewels on the dark, flowing water. The air was soft, carrying the faint scent of river reeds and distant cooking fires. The gentle lapping of the water against the embankment provided a soothing counterpoint to the city's distant hum. We had been talking, mostly of nothing in particular, just the day's observations, small anecdotes, but now a comfortable quiet had settled between us. Nicole shifted slightly on the bench, and then her hand reached out. It wasn't a hesitant touch this time, but a firm yet gentle pressure as she placed her hand over mine, where it rested on my knee. Her fingers were warm, and her thumb, with a feather-like grace, began to stroke my skin. It was a simple gesture, yet it sent a wave of warmth coursing through me, spreading from my hand, up my arm, and settling deep within my chest. In that moment, words felt entirely superfluous. The touch spoke volumes, conveying a depth of feeling, a sense of belonging, that no spoken phrase could possibly capture. I felt a profound sense of rightness, of being exactly where I was meant to be, with exactly whom I was meant to be with. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the feeling wash over me, absorbing its quiet power. It was an unspoken affirmation, a silent, powerful exchange that solidified the understanding between us, a deepening bond woven not with grand declarations, but with the quiet, intricate threads of genuine affection and shared comfort. My world, once subtly muted by Nicole's absence, now vibrated with a vibrant, resonant hum. Our burgeoning relationship, while profoundly joyful, was not without its intricate currents. Nicole, though possessing a modern, independent spirit, was deeply rooted in her family and the rich tapestry of Egyptian traditions. I observed her internal conflicts, the subtle hesitations that would sometimes flicker in her eyes when she spoke of our future, the quiet determination that followed them. We were, after all, navigating a landscape far more complex than just two hearts finding each other. We had candid conversations, not about specifics initially, but about the broader implications of our connection. The weight of societal expectations, the unspoken pressures of family, the different paths our lives had taken, these were the tides we had to consider. Nicole, with a quiet strength, spoke of her family's hopes for her, the path they envisioned. Her voice was steady, but I could perceive the undercurrent of her own thoughts, the silent balance she was constantly striving to maintain. I, usually fiercely independent and often impatient, found myself learning a new kind of patience, a deeper understanding. I was adapting to a pace and rhythm different from my own, recognizing that love, in this context, required not just passion but a profound respect for cultural intricacies. I listened more, absorbed more, trying to comprehend the nuances of her world. I began to appreciate the profound trust Nicole was placing in me, in us, by allowing me into these delicate considerations. It was a brave vulnerability on her part, an unspoken invitation to truly understand the landscape of her life. This new depth of understanding didn't create distance. Instead, it strengthened our bond, making us more resilient. It transformed our connection from a blossoming romance into something more robust, something capable of weathering external pressures. We were not just two people in love. We were two individuals learning to bridge worlds, to honor traditions while forging a new path. The challenges were real, but the quiet determination in Nicole's eyes and the growing conviction in my own heart told me they were not insurmountable. Our connection, forged in the sands of an ancient land, felt capable of enduring whatever tides we might encounter. The time for my second departure approached, yet this farewell felt profoundly different. There was no longer the sharp, agonizing ache of separation, replaced instead by a shared understanding, a quiet, resolute commitment. The previous goodbye had been a closing chapter. This one was merely an ellipsis, a pause before the next sentence. We spent our last evening together not in somber silence, but in thoughtful conversation, discussing our future. There were no grand declarations, no sweeping promises that felt untethered from reality. Instead, our discussions were practical, heartfelt, grounded in the quiet strength of our bond. Nicole spoke of her dreams for her career, the importance of her family, and the challenges of cultural transition. She articulated her worries, her hopes, her quiet determination. "It will not be easy, Danielle," she said, her voice soft, her fingers tracing patterns on the table between us. "But I believe we can find a way." I, in turn, spoke of my own life, the flexibility of my work, the quiet pull of a life less solitary. We spoke of visiting each other, of learning each other's languages, of building a bridge between our worlds, brick by patient brick. We found common ground in shared values, in a mutual respect for each other's lives, and in an unwavering belief in the unique connection we shared. On our last night, under a sky now familiar, yet still wondrous, its vastness reminding me of the journey ahead, we stood close, the city's distant hum a gentle lullaby. Nicole looked at me, her eyes shining with an emotion that transcended simple affection, a blend of hope, love, and quiet courage. She whispered a quiet promise, a hopeful declaration that echoed in the very core of my heart. It wasn't a question, but an affirmation, a gentle statement of intent. My voice, thick with emotion, responded in kind, sealing our shared future not with grand pronouncements, but with a profound, heartfelt agreement. We embraced then a long, comforting hug that spoke of enduring connection, of a future we would build together, across continents and cultures, woven with shared dreams and unwavering commitment. This time, the farewell was not an end, but a beginning. Returning home this time, there was no emptiness, no gnawing void that my routine struggled to fill. The longing for Nicole was still present, a soft thrum beneath the surface, but it was replaced by a sense of hopeful anticipation, a quiet certainty. The filter over my perception had been lifted, and the world seemed to burst with a renewed vibrancy. We maintained constant communication, bridging the considerable distance with a steady stream of calls, video chats, and messages. We shared the mundane details of our daily lives, transforming thousands of miles into a mere inconvenience. Nicole would tell me about her progress at the museum, the intricacies of her family's week, the latest street vendor's discovery. I, in turn, would share the complexities of my latest conservation project, the quiet moments with my friends, the changing seasons in my own corner of the world. Each interaction was a thread, weaving our two lives into a single, cohesive tapestry. I found myself actively planning for Nicole's first visit, researching visas, arranging accommodation, a quiet thrill building with each confirmed detail. I immersed myself in learning more about her culture, delving into books on Egyptian history, language, and customs. It was more than just research. It was an act of love, a desire to understand and integrate her world into mine. Tangible plans for our future together began to take shape, not just whispered dreams under a desert sky, but concrete steps towards building a shared life. My character had transformed in ways I hadn't anticipated. I was more open, less guarded, more resilient in the face of uncertainty. The cautious, analytical layers I had once relied on had softened, allowing for a deeper, more profound connection to another person than I ever imagined possible. The challenges of a long-distance, cross-cultural relationship remained, yes, but they no longer seemed insurmountable. They were simply hurdles to navigate, shared endeavors that only strengthened our bond. The love we had found in the ancient sands of Egypt had become an enduring current, shaping our lives, gently but persistently pulling us towards a shared horizon, a future we were actively creating. The following year saw the quiet triumph of our persistent efforts. Nicole, with a courage I deeply admired, secured a specialized fellowship in historical curation, allowing her to spend an extended period in the States. Her arrival was a culmination of anticipation, a tangible manifestation of all our dreams and planning. Seeing her step off that plane, her face alight with a mixture of excitement and nervous hope, was a moment that etched itself into my memory with an indelible clarity. My embrace was tight, a silent testament to the journey we had both undertaken. We began the beautiful, sometimes challenging, process of navigating our two worlds. My apartment, once so sterile, now buzzed with her presence, the gentle scent of her perfume mingling with the familiar smell of old books. We introduced each other to our respective friends, our families, explaining our unusual love story with a quiet conviction that usually disarmed any initial skepticism. Nicole, with her innate grace and intelligence, quickly endeared herself to everyone, her insights into different cultures proving to be a fascinating addition to any conversation. There were moments of adjustment, of course. The directness of American communication sometimes jarred with her more nuanced cultural norms, and the fast pace of city life occasionally left her yearning for the quiet contemplation she was accustomed to. Similarly, I found myself learning new ways of expressing myself, of understanding unspoken cues, of appreciating the profound beauty in slower rhythms. We learned, we grew, and we built a life together, brick by patient brick, bridging the gaps with an unwavering commitment to understanding and mutual respect. Reflecting on that initial, bewildering encounter in the bustling market, I often found myself marveling at the sheer serendipity of it all. A simple act of kindness in a foreign land had led me not only to discover a soulmate, but also to a deeper understanding of myself. Nicole had, through her quiet strength and gentle, unwavering spirit, shown me the incredible strength found in vulnerability and trust. My carefully constructed life had been gently, beautifully dismantled and rebuilt, far richer and more expansive than I could have ever imagined. Our love, a vibrant tapestry woven with threads of different cultures and experiences, stood as a testament to the transformative power of unexpected connection and the courage to embrace an unconventional path, proving that sometimes the most extraordinary treasures are found in the most unlikely of places.